April 1942. The coast of New Jersey. 0300 hours. The Atlantic is a sheet of black glass under a thin, scudding moon. Below the surface, the only sound is the rhythmic thrum of the U-552's diesels. Aboard the conning tower, Captain Lieutenant Eric Topp, one of the war's most successful U-boat aces, takes a deep draw from his cigarette. The scent of salt and diesel is the only perfume he needs. He is on patrol in American waters, a domain he has come to call his happy time. The Americans, he thinks, are children at this war. They are slow, their coastal patrols predictable, and their merchant convoys easy pickings. Just 2 hours ago, Topp had put a torpedo into a lumbering American tanker, the flash still a dull orange memory in his mind. The U-boats had sunk over 600 Allied ships in the first 6 months of America's war, an unprecedented rate of destruction known to the U.S. Navy as the Second Battle of the Atlantic. The losses were staggering. Oil, steel, and supplies desperately needed in Britain were vanishing into the depths, often within sight of American homes. The crisis on the U.S. side was acute. The Navy simply didn't have enough dedicated anti-submarine vessels. Destroyers were needed in the Pacific and to escort transatlantic convoys. The coastline, from Maine to Florida, was open season for Topp and his comrades. Admiral Ernest J. King, Chief of Naval Operations, knew the situation was untenable. He needed bodies on the water, and he needed them yesterday. His solution was audacious, perhaps even desperate. He ordered the immediate commissioning of the civilian coastal patrol, better known as the Yankee Fleet. This wasn't a professional navy. This was a grab for anything that floated and could carry a depth charge. Private yachts, fishing trawlers, pleasure cruisers, even former rum runners, hundreds of civilian vessels were hurriedly acquired or leased. Wealthy owners, ordinary citizens, and fishermen were suddenly naval recruits, their gleaming mahogany decks and carpeted salons replaced with hastily mounted 3-inch deck guns and racks of depth charges. They were given the cryptic hull designations of YP, Yard Patrol, or PC, Patrol Craft, but to everyone who saw them, they were a patchwork fleet, a motley collection of unlikely warships. They were often underpowered, poorly armed, and commanded by men who knew yachting more than warfare. Back on the U-552, Eric Topp's binoculars sweep the dark horizon, searching for the next fat target. He is looking for a convoy, or perhaps a lone freighter, anything that justifies the risk of being this close to the enemy shore. Instead, his hydrophone operator reports a weak, unfamiliar acoustic signature. It's too small for a convoy, too erratic for a warship. Topp scoffs, thinking it must be a local fishing boat, something to be avoided, not a threat. The war, to the German High Command, was being fought by professionals. The Americans were using the Atlantic as a proving ground for their heavy industry and their destroyers. They certainly weren't using that. The strange, small contact closes. Topp surfaces the U-boat, wanting to visually identify the nuisance before submerging for a deeper hunt. The moon breaks from behind a cloud, illuminating a silhouette on the water. It isn't a destroyer. It isn't a corvette. It is a long, sleek motor yacht, perhaps 70 feet long, clearly a luxury vessel, painted a dull, mismatched gray. A single, small cannon is barely visible on the foredeck. Topp lowers his binoculars, a slow, incredulous smile crossing his face. They are being patrolled by a pleasure boat. The sheer audacity, the amateurism of the American defense is staggering. He had heard rumors in Lorient about the Americans using yachts, but seeing it was utterly different. It was an insult. Topp gives a curt command, "Divert, we will not waste a torpedo on that toy. Let them play their game." He is dismissing it, mocking it. But this YP-62, formerly the yacht Arcadia, has a crew of stubborn New England fishermen and a hold full of very real explosives. They are on their designated patrol, and they have just picked up a suspicious sonar return, the metallic clang of a U-boat surfacing. Aboard the YP-62, the mood is electric, a mix of sheer terror and adrenaline. The captain, a retired Wall Street broker named Lieutenant Commander Thomas Blake, has his hands white-knuckled on the wheel. He has never commanded anything larger than a cabin cruiser for a family vacation, and now he is staring down the periscope sheath of a legendary German U-boat, the submarine of Eric Topp himself. "Sound General Quarters, target bearing 090, Blake yells, his voice cracking slightly, but carrying the unmistakable ring of authority. He is following the manual, the official procedure hammered into them during their expedited 6-week naval training. His crew, a former chef, a plumber, and 2 college dropouts, scramble to their posts. This is not the battle for which U-boat commanders trained. They expected the well-oiled efficiency of a British Flower-class corvette, not the chaotic and determined amateurism of a repurposed pleasure boat. The YP-62 charges the position. Topp, still on the surface, is infuriated by the yacht's reckless approach. It is not professional behavior, it is suicidal. He orders a crash dive, but the Arcadia is surprisingly quick for a civilian boat designed for leisure. Before the U-552 can fully submerge, the yacht is directly overhead. The former plumber, assigned to the depth charge rack, heaves a single K-gun charge over the stern. It is a terrifying, blind shot. The charge sinks, and the Atlantic erupts in a massive, churning geyser of white foam and black water. The concussion rocks the small yacht violently. Below, the shock is absolute. The depth charge explodes close enough to rattle the U-552's rivets and shatter a light bulb in the radio room. Topp, thrown against a bulkhead, stares in disbelief at the shuddering manometer. This wasn't a military vessel, it was a yacht. Yet it was hunting them with cold, aggressive intent. The psychological effect of being hunted by such a low-value, non-military target was stunning. It broke the pattern. It shattered the comfortable sense of superiority the German crews had enjoyed in American waters. This incident, and dozens like it, began to change the perception within the U-boat service. Reports filtered back to Grand Admiral Karl Donitz, detailing encounters not just with military patrols, but with armed trawlers and sleek sailboats, the Hilfsminenseeker, or auxiliary minesweepers, and YP vessels of the Yankee Fleet. These ships, though lacking in proper sonar and speed, were everywhere. They maintained a constant, irritating presence, forcing U-boats to remain submerged longer, burn more valuable battery power, and lose vital hunting time. The Americans, Topp realized, were using their industrial might and civilian ingenuity to solve a naval crisis with sheer, overwhelming volume. They couldn't build destroyers fast enough, so they simply armed every single available boat on the eastern seaboard. They had turned their entire coastline into a haphazard, unpredictable, and endless patrol zone. The happy time was ending, not with a clash against a mighty naval force, but a slow, grinding realization that the U-boats were now facing the limitless resources of American civilian life itself. The YP-62 circles back, its searchlight now sweeping the dark water for oil or debris. They missed the U-552, which is now limping away deep below. But the engagement had a far greater strategic cost than a single torpedo. The lesson of American determination was delivered.
The deployment of the Yankee Fleet was a tide, not a wave, and its impact was felt cumulatively. By late 1942 and into 1943, the amateur patrol was becoming significantly more professional. The Navy, learning from the chaos, began providing better training, more standardized armament, and most importantly, basic radar and sonar to the vessels they requisitioned. The former yachts and fishing vessels, though never a substitute for a true destroyer, filled the gaps, providing invaluable early warning and localized anti-submarine sweeps. One of the most famous examples of the Yankee Fleet's success came on January 14, 1942, when the armed fishing trawler USS Eagle, UP-89, detected and engaged a U-boat off the coast of New England. The small, unassuming trawler forced the German boat to retreat without attacking its intended convoy target. These engagements, while rarely resulting in a confirmed kill during the early days, were a critical shift in the operational environment. They introduced an element of risk and saturation that German commanders had not previously factored into their patrols. Grand Admiral Donitz, initially delighted by the U-boat's easy hunting, began receiving reports that were less celebratory. U-boat captains complained about the swarms of little American boats, the constant pinging of sonar, and the sheer volume of air and sea traffic making coastal hunting impossible. They were now forced to operate further out to sea, away from the rich, easy targets of the shipping lanes, and closer to the main Allied convoys where true anti-submarine warships, the destroyers, corvettes, and specialized hunter-killer groups waited. This relentless pressure served two key strategic goals for the U.S. Navy. First, it bought precious time. The existence of the Yankee Fleet allowed the U.S. to focus its massive industrial engine on mass-producing specialized anti-submarine vessels, like the PC-461-class submarine chasers and the Buckley and Evarts-class destroyer escorts. Second, it pushed the U-boats out, directly contributing to the German failure to stop the flow of vital war material to Europe. The sheer sight of a 50-foot yacht with a gun on the bow became a symbol of the American inability to be beaten by conventional military thinking. The U-boat captains, experts in their craft, were stunned to find their professional war being ruined by armed civilians. By May 1943, a month later dubbed Black May by the Germans, the situation had fully reversed. Improved sonar, high-frequency direction finding, HFDF, longer-range aircraft patrols, and the sheer number of surface escorts, including the Yankee Fleet's contribution, drove the U-boat losses to an unsustainable high. The German High Command was forced to withdraw most of its U-boats from the Western Atlantic. The toy boats had done their job. The American coast was safe. The war for the U-boat captains didn't end that night off New Jersey, but their victory had. They learned a harsh, unforgettable lesson. Never dismiss the ingenuity and sheer scale of adaptation. The Yankee Fleet, built from the marinas and shipyards of peacetime America, was a true, if bizarre, testament to the depth of the nation's mobilization.